apart like that. I guess another area that I'm particularly interested in is brain health and energy levels when it comes to the impact of the ultra-processed foods, the added sugar, stuff like that.
And that's probably one of the biggest areas that it also has an impact on, so if you're eating a lot.
Welcome to Pegasus versus the World, where we take on challenges, comedy, trending topics, and some travel. City boy! City boy! All right, you guys, what's up, man? We back. Anyways, I wanted to check out this conversation with Rhonda Patrick, and the title was Eating This Stiffens Your Heart and Inflames Your Brain. So I always like Rhonda Patrick's interviews, her podcast, a bunch of stuff, and I feel like, when I watch a lot of this stuff, I also learn how to tighten up certain things I'm doing. A lot of things, fundamentally, I think I have it down pretty right on the way you're supposed to eat in general, when it comes to sugar, proteins, carbs, stuff like that. We all fall off the wagon, or is that the saying, and I think it's okay. I think everything in balance. You don't have to have discipline throughout the whole week. But me personally, I try my hardest to practice what I preach and eat properly, Monday through Friday. Then on the weekends, I try to while out a little bit. But hey, man, we all fall short of the glory. So let's see what's going on here. But I'd like to see if I can learn something new about health and maybe share that with you guys. And, I think these are good conversations to have. This is always a trending topic. Your health is always a trending topic, and it should be the most important thing in your life, because you cannot be wealthy without your health. That is the fundamental principle of wealth or abundance, is your health. If you're not healthy, you will always spend all of your money trying to reach health. So I would always encourage people to try to focus on their health and be as healthy as possible. So let's get into it. Like, share, comment, subscribe. If you rock with me, link in the description of my other channels. I'm Black Pegasus. Let's go. Let's see what they're talking about.
To the podcast, we'll probably have a good indication of, well, where's my body weight at? And I probably go to the gym and I do all the rest of this stuff. What else is happening? How else can I motivate myself to pick the healthier option, even if I know that my waistline isn't going to be the determining factor for this? Obesity isn't that much of a risk for me. So what is it that could be happening? So I think it's interesting to sort of break it apart like that. I guess another area that I'm particularly interested in is brain health and energy levels when it comes to the impact of the ultra-processed foods, the added sugar, stuff like that.
And that's probably one of the biggest areas that it also has an impact on, so if you're eating a lot of added sugar, then, you can have you can basically be on the high end of the normal range for blood glucose levels. So you're within the normal range, but on the higher end, right? So you're not diabetic. So you might think, oh, I don't have diabetes, I'm fine. I'm still within the normal range. But there are studies showing that people on the high end of the normal range have increased atrophy in the hippocampus part of their brain that's involved in learning and memory, and they have higher atrophy in the amygdala part of their brain that's involved in emotional regulation, compared to people on the lower end, have blood glucose levels in the lower end of the normal range. So that's an association study, right? There's also
angry and forgetful,
right? But again, it's association study. There's also other studies showing that higher blood glucose levels are associated with increased, 54% risk, increased risk for vascular dementia. So glucose, what it's doing when you have a constant intake of glucose, and that glucose, let's say you're not exercising enough to have that glucose get disposed into your muscle, which is really where you want it, right? You want it to get taken up into your muscle. Exercise really helps with that. So when you exercise, you cause a lot of glucose transporters to come up to your muscle, which opens up the gates to allow glucose in. You want it to go to your muscle instead of your adipose tissue. If that doesn't happen, if you're not exercising enough, the glucose will stay around in your bloodstream. And what happens is, yes, there's an insulin response and all that metabolic stuff, but there's also something that happens that's called the Maillard reaction. And it's where glucose reacts with lipids, it reacts with DNA in your body, it reacts with proteins and damages them. And when it reacts with proteins, like, for example, collagen, lining your pericardium surrounding your heart, your myocardium surrounding your heart, lining your blood vessels, it causes the collagen to become stiff. It changes the properties of the protein. It makes them stiff, kind of like trans fats. Actually, that's a really good analogy. I didn't think about that, but it's really kind of a similar thing. It causes your blood vessels to become stiff. It causes your the tissue surrounding your heart to become stiff, and that plays a major role in the stiffening of the heart with age, which affects it affects cardiovascular disease risk, right? So you're talking about
That's crazy. And we're basically talking about sugar, which that makes sense. I thought they might have like something that you're eating, which it is sugar in your diet. Typically a rule of thumb from everything I've read is that, your breakfast is important to manage your glucose and the way, it spikes throughout the day. So the best thing for breakfast is protein and healthy fats, right? Like some avocado, olive oil, eggs, steak, whatever, right? That's the best way to start if you do breakfast. Some people fast through breakfast. I actually fast through the night because I found it better for me to stop eating around 5 or 6 p.m. So when I do go to bed around 10 o'clock, my body's not processing food and I actually get a more sound rest and sleep a little better through the night. And that's just, when I was younger, I could eat pizza at 1 a.m. and go to bed at 1:15 and just feel like I had a good sleep, Was I getting a good sleep or not? I don't know. When you're on the rapper, rock star lifestyle and you're young, I was able to pull it off, but I can't pull stuff off like that anymore and feel the way I need to feel to get through a day. Anyways, if you are eating sugar, which it comes in different forms. It's not just processed sugars like, carbs, like the rice, the potatoes, the breads, these things, the pastas and stuff like that. That's going to give you an amount of sugar as well. So essentially what I was always told was like, after you eat a big lunch, that's, so never in the morning have sugar, right? It's just not it. Like you'll have glucose spikes all day. I don't know the exact reason why or how to explain it. C-level student explanations here, but essentially from what I gathered, it's like you keep having glucose spikes throughout the day when you set it off with sugar early in the morning, and that's from many different things, right? But essentially, protein, healthy fats in the morning, then have a big lunch. Then after the lunch, because your body's already digesting this stuff, it's a little easier when you have some, the sugars after a big lunch or dinner. I guess the glucose spikes aren't as, severe. But this is interesting, saying that it goes as far as like stiffening your heart and inflaming your brain is crazy.
about just an accumulation of this Maillard reaction. What happens is it forms something called advanced glycation end products, and that's what is basically stiffening the proteins like collagen, which are around forever. Your collagen surrounding your heart, and it's there, and you don't want to make it stiffer, right? So that's something to consider as well as the fact that it is affecting cognition and the brain as well. So we talked about brain aging. It causes inflammation. So, for example, I mentioned the study of men that consumed the sort of 20-ounce sugar-sweetened beverage, and they had 100% increase in their inflammatory markers after 3 weeks. Well, inflammation is essentially those molecules are getting into the brain, crossing over the blood-brain barrier, and they're getting into the brain. It was thought for a long time that inflammatory molecules don't cross the blood-brain barrier, but that years ago was debunked. We now know a lot of cytokines and inflammatory things are crossing the blood-brain barrier. And when they get into the brain, they are doing a variety of things. For one, they're affecting mood immediately. And we know that for a fact. We know causally. You can take a healthy person and inject them with lipopolysaccharide, which is something it's found in our gut. It's a component of bacterial membrane. So we have a lot of bacteria in our gut. It makes up our microbiome. When you have leaky gut, intestinal permeability, lipopolysaccharide gets into your circulation. Refined sugar does do that. You can inject normal healthy people with lipopolysaccharide or placebo, which is saline, and it causes massive inflammation. Okay, like what I just talked about with a sugar-sweetened beverage. And those people then end up getting depressive symptoms. So it plays a role in their mood. But if you blunt that inflammatory response with something like EPA, which is a component of omega-3, it's one of the omega-3 fatty acids, it doesn't cause the depressive mood. So inflammation does affect mood. We also know that when you have a high inflammatory state, which I just gave a lot of evidence for in terms of added sugar, it changes the metabolism of tryptophan. Tryptophan is an essential amino acid we get from our diet. It's in proteins. It's a precursor for serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's involved in cognition, executive function. It's involved in mood. What inflammation does is it causes tryptophan, instead of being converted into serotonin, it causes it to be converted into something called kynurenine, which is involved in inflammation. It's basically your body's going, oh, I'm inflamed. I've got a pathogen. Okay, there's no pathogen. It's actually just added sugar, too much added sugar, right? Constantly. And so your body thinks it's a pathogen. And so it's trying to then make anything it can to activate immune cells to take care of the pathogen, right? But the problem is that it's not a pathogen. So kynurenine.
Okay, so I'm going to let her finish, but there was some heavy stuff said in this that I want to tackle, because essentially what she's getting at is that, sugar can cause inflammation. Inflammation can cause things as much as depression. That's what I was getting from that. Which, when you think about where we've come in society from the mental health issues, at least that we have in America, and then you start making these correlations from how much soda is consumed in America, like processed sugars, candy, even holidays, they're not really a holiday, but like Halloween, just think about that overload that's happening to the body in humans and how much inflammation. That's just insane what she's saying. And again, I'm interpreting this as the best way I can, because these are, I don't even know. Hold on. Let me play this. I'll find out what Rhonda Patrick is.
So it's trying to then make anything it can to activate immune cells to take care of the pathogen, right? But the problem is that it's not a pathogen. So kynurenine helps with that whole activating the immune system. But also what it does is, as it's metabolized, it can form something called quinolinic acid, which is a neurotoxin, and it's also associated with depression. So you're talking about inflammation now affecting, key metabolic processes that are important for cognition, executive function, mood, and dampening those processes, right? So you can immediately have an effect on cognition. I mean, you get like a quick sugar high, but boy, does that go away pretty quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like you immediately start to feel like that sort of.
Yeah, if you wanted to reliably make your mental performance bad, having a donut and a Coke an hour before you were supposed to do something important is probably a pretty good way to do it.
Exactly. It's almost like when you're sick, how you feel, right? You feel foggy, brain foggy, because your inflammation, your immune system's activated. So
first and foremost, just so you guys know her accolades, it's crazy actually how many accolades she has, but Dr. Rhonda Patrick is a biomedical scientist and health educator renowned for her contributions to the fields of aging, nutrition, and disease prevention. Her accolades span academic research, scientific publications, the public health communication. And I mean, this thing goes like, it just starts, like at first it brings the picture up, and then it just goes. So she has accolades. You can look her up, Rhonda Patrick. But anyways, what this gives me concerns for me personally is, as I've hit 45, there have been these moments of brain fog, a little bit of memory loss in the sense of trying to grab certain words. For some reason, the word that always slips my brain is demoralization. I've been like, I always want to say like, degradation, demonetization. And for some reason, so there's like certain words. And I notice when I just wake up, I haven't eaten, I'm just drinking water, I'm a little more sharp. If I eat like some eggs and stuff, I'm still sharp. But the moment I add the bagel to it, I slow down, get a little fuzzy. But this made me realize I need to pay attention to the brain fog and the mood shifts and what I'm eating, because I don't feel like it was as noticeable when I was young. But now that I'm 45 years old, it's very noticeable. I'll have this big meal after I train. I'll have this big meal, and then I'll sit in the recliner and start working on my laptop. and I will feel some type of way. And it's so easy to fall in the trap of just like, oh, I'm going to do this today. I'm going to be lazy and have this food that isn't best for me. And then I feel some type of way, and I'm not always correlating how I feel to what I ate. And I'm going to just have to do that all the time now. I'm going to have to tighten up a couple things because I'm pretty healthy. But this kind of opened my eyes to some things. That was a good one. I hope you guys watch some of this stuff. This is like almost, even though I like laughing and stuff like this stuff is really important. Like, this is one of my passions. So that's why I decided to rock with a couple of these today. Anyways, you guys let me know what I got, what I missed. What do you think of this information and content? And I'll holler.
City boy, city boy.